What's good YouTube, Quasar here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys my updated Satellarknight deck profile. So starting off, pretty basic, we play 3 copies of Deneb. Deneb is even more important now because we only have 1 Rhoda, so you have to play it at 3. Whenever it's summoned, you get to add another Satellarknight from deck to hand. Next, we play 3 copies of Chronomaly. This has to be bumped up to 3 now again because Rhoda's at 1. Whenever it's summoned, send 1 from deck to grave, except a copy of itself. And then, yeah, same with Deneb, you can't add a copy of itself. But yeah, usually when you summon it, you're going to be sending Deneb. 3 copies of Altair. Whenever Altair is summoned, you get the special summon 1 from your graveyard, of course, except a copy of itself. And if you do use the effect of Altair, you can only attack with Satellarknight monsters that turn. So just keep that in mind when you are using Altair. Then lastly, for Satellarknight monsters, only 2 copies of Vega. You don't really need 3. 2 is good enough. 3 might be a little bit cloggy, but yeah, whenever it's summoned, you get to summon another Satellarknight from hand. So this deck is pretty simple. You're basically gonna be abusing the effects of Vega, Altair, and Deneb, and just looping those 3 monsters into a 3 material XZs, either being Triver or Deltaros. Deck is pretty straightforward, so yeah, that's it for your Satellarknight monsters, I should say. We are also playing 1 copy of Thunder King just to like lock out opponents, and it's another light level 4 monster. It's really good because it stops both players from searching, but like you can just drop it and sit on your back row too, and basically just lock your opponent out. Also, if they're gonna special something that's gonna be like troublesome, you can just tribute this guy and then he can negate that special summon. So another really awesome effect for Thunder King. And lastly, for monsters, 2 copies of Max C, just because you want that draw power and digging into your deck for your combo pieces. Moving on to spells, we play 2 copies of Skybridge. Skybridge is really good first turn to like out your Unokalhai into something that you need, probably either Altair or Vega, and then you can go into that first turn like Deltaros or Triver. Also, it helps, it's a quick play too, so if you set it, it helps out things like Bottomless. 1 copy of Rhoda now that it's at 1, but it's still mandatory to play. 1 copy of Soul Charge, of course, really good. And of course 1 Regeki. And lastly, for spells, we're playing 2 copies of MST. We're not playing Twin Twister because we're usually trying to keep our hand as full as possible. And we don't really have a lot of things that we are going to want to discard. Alright, so now traps. We play 3 copies of Stellar Nova Alpha, your generic counter trap card. Basically negates anything just by tributing a face-up Satellarknight monster. But also you get to draw a card, so it kind of still replaces itself. 3 copies of Anti-Spell Fragrance. This card's really good at shutting down all the pendulum decks. Every deck needs spell cards, so if you are able to activate this early and then just sit on it, it'll disrupt your opponent a lot. So 3 copies in the main is really good. And of course 3 copies of Call of the Haunted to just be bringing back all your Satellarknights and then getting their effects off again. Along with 1 copy of Oasis. I usually see people running like 2 or even 3 Oasis, which I think is kind of cloggy. Like, you still want to have your combo pieces in the graveyard in order to get these off too. So I found the 3-in-1 the perfect ratio, so that's what I'm playing. 2 copies of Fiendish Chain. A lot of things nowadays aren't really targetable, so 2 is really all you need. I mean, they can still use those monsters as like Xyz materials, synchro materials, things like that. So Fiendish Chain isn't as useful, but it's still a good card in the deck nonetheless. 1 copy of Macrocosmos in the main. This card is actually really good at like shutting down opponents' plays. A lot of the meta revolves around things in the graveyard, so if you have this on the field, they won't be sending anything to the graveyard because it gets banished instead, and they're just getting rid of their combo pieces. So 1 copy of Macro. 1 Vanities, just because it just stops special summons. 1 copy of Bottomless, and 1 copy of Time Space because we are playing Rafflesia as well. And then for stopping the summons, we have a basic 3. We play 1 copy of Grandhorn, 1 copy of Solemn Warning, and 1 Solemn Strike. All very good at shutting down your opponent's special summons. So that's it for the main deck. So we will move on to the extra. Play 1 copy of Deltaros. Deltaros is really good for just popping opponent's monsters or like spell trap cards, things like that. So you basically want to be going into him like first turn, so your opponent will have to like play around him. Also, if they do get over him, you can special summon 1 from deck or hand, but you usually want to pick deck, so that way you can fill up your field with as many Satellarknight monsters as possible. We play 2 copies of Triver. This is going to be your main Xyz monster of the game. Because you're playing so many continuous trap cards, you want to drop this while most of them are face up. Everything except for Triver on field gets returned to hand. So all of those traps that you've already used go back to hand, and then you get to reset them again. So that is like the basic loop that you're trying to pull off in Satellarknights. Also, if they do get over this guy as well, you get to special summon another Satellarknight from grave. So these guys replace themselves. Really good. You also play 1 copy of Diamond, which just really shuts down all dark decks, and pretty much, again, everything meta you're going to see dark. So really good. You want to be bringing this guy out early as well. 1 copy of Omega, because all it takes is just 2 level 4 lights, and it just protects itself from back row. Also, because Diamond is considered a Constellar, it can also protect Diamond as well. 1 number 86. If they destroy your Deltaros, you can often pull this guy off with 5 materials, and that is usually a win right there, unless they can negate the summon. But if they can't, then a 3k beater that's like unaffected can destroy all other cards. Is just way too strong. Opponent usually can't get over it, and that's pretty much game. As I said, I was playing 1 Rafflesia. Rafflesia is really good because you get to use those trap cards from your deck rather than having to set them. 1 copy of 101 Stealing Monsters, 1 copy of Castel to just return problematic cards back. Daigusto Emerald to shuffle your graveyard back into the deck and then draw a card. 1 Abyss Dweller, again, to like stop graveyard effects from going off. Gaga Cowboy just for that 800 point burn. And then the last 3 monsters, 1 Utopia, which you're gonna be ranking up into Utopia Ray, which then will rank up into Utopia the Lightning. We play Lightning because of the Cosmo matchup. This deck doesn't really have much to combat Cosmos, but going into Utopia, extremely simple. You just instantly overlay into Utopia Ray, and then on top of that, the Lightning. So that way you have access into the Lightning's effect 2 times rather than just 1 if you only use Utopia. So that's it for the deck. I hope you guys liked it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.